Okay, so as we were saying, November 11th, Thursday. Here's the files for today, downloaded to Canvas. And Mary Kate, I'm going to make you the host. I'll be in and out. You should be able to pause recording when you go on break. If we adjourn early, that's no problem. Um, I've got we need to do a hands-on exercise, guys, like I showed you with that US states research question. We need to do a dealer's choice. You guys find a data set, something interesting to you, that you can manipulate in Excel, and I'll give you a little bit more specific requirements. I'd like to see a few different types of charts, pivot tables, those sort of things, based on the data that you choose to use for practice. So I know I didn't do the advanced sharing options. So that lets you share your screen, Mary Kate. Let me stop share. But I want to make you a host as well. I'm trying to see if that's in the participants window. If it's a menu like next to your name, maybe. More. Make a host. Do you want to change the host to Mary Kate Sumner? Yes. So are you Zoom? Are you a Zoomer?
I can do okay with it. Yeah.
Hit
I don't
hit
use it all the time, but
cool. Hit pause and see if you're now that you're the host, you can pause recording.
It's actually telling me, it's actually asking me, it doesn't have a pause button. It's asking me to record. But yet beside your name, it still says record. So you might have to stop recording for me to record.
Well, I'm going to pause it.
Yes, no, and then name alphabetized, sorry. And then there you go. So alphabetized and then still employed, yes or no. Okay. Now we have talked about removing duplicates as well. So we're going to highlight the area. And I want to remove duplicates for the name, not if they're all the exact same. We're going to go to the data tab. Over in the middle, it should say remove duplicates. Like I said, y'all's might look a little different. The version I use at work, the remove duplicates is a big box. So remove duplicates, and I'm going to unselect all and then click name only. So it's going to focus on the name and remove any information that is double related to any name is double, which means any row. Okay. So we're going to hit OK. And so all of those were removed. And like I said, if you are wanting to keep double names, but you're wanting to remove the duplicates of something specific of the rest of the items, then you would look at that differently. Okay. And then we're going to insert a pivot table. So we're going to start working on pivot tables this morning. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to do a real quick VLOOKUP to remind you how to do that. We're going to go to the VLOOKUP 1 tab at the bottom on the new tab, and we're going to look up the sector from the VLOOKUP 2 tab. Okay. So I'm going to review that real quick. I'm just reviewing because it is one of those things. Some people, if you didn't get to practice on it, it just is going to help you remember how to do certain things. So we're going to use VLOOKUP to look up the sector that's on this page here and bring it to this page. Okay. So we're going to start at the empty cell and go equals VLOOKUP tab. You're looking up the specific ID because that's the special unique ID, unique item. You're going to click comma, and you can follow along here. Now it's highlighted table array. So you're wanting to look up where is this information that you're looking for going at right now and where you're going to pull it over. So where is it at now? It is in VLOOKUP 2, and you have to make sure you highlight the special ID and all the information up to, at least up to the item that you're wanting to pull over. So we're wanting to pull the sector over. So we're going to hit comma. And the next thing that highlights is the index number, the column index number. So you're counting how many columns from the special unique ID to the item that you're pulling over. So that would be A, B, C, D. So that's 4. And we're going to type the number 4 and then comma. And then we're going to type false for the exact match. In the parentheses, hit enter, and then it brings you back to your Excel spreadsheet that you're working on. So when you're working, remember to just follow along how you're typing. You don't have to be back on the original Excel spreadsheet until it pulls you back over, okay? I know sometimes that'll kind of throw you off. So then I'm just going to double click to bring it all in, make sure it's all on there. I don't want it to mess up pulling over, so I want to keep this data here. So I'm going to right click at this point, copy, right click, paste. If you just do a copy paste quick using the keyboard, unless you know the quick version for the values, you don't want to do just a paste that way because it won't paste just the values. So now in the check yourself, you just click on it and it won't have the formula anymore. Okay. So I'm going to filter this area by going, and let me show you another area you can use filter. So you can usually go to home and click filter, but let's go to data, and there's a filter area in the middle. There's also a sort option. I have a lot of friends that when I talk to them, I use the home page because it's right there, home tab. I have a lot of them that go all the way to the data and click on it because it's bigger, it's in the middle. So it just depends on what you prefer and what's easier on you. So we're going to click filter there, and we're going to look at all these zeros. The zeros refer to the fact that the item, the ID number was on the other Excel spreadsheet that you're pulling from, but it does not have a sector. It means it's blank. Okay. So those you can either rename, you can put new information on it, you could say blank, you could, just note that those zeros mean that that item is blank on the other page. So it does not have a sector in this situation. And then we're going to look at the NAs. These mean they're not on the other page. Okay, so they're not on there at all. So depending on what you're working on, you might need to find out why they're not on there. Maybe they're supposed to be on there. Why are they not on there? And make your notes, etc. Okay. Now, related to that, we also talked about adding an error comment to them. So let's do the technology VLOOKUP real quick, just to remind you on that. So equals if error. Actually, what I'm going to start with is equals VLOOKUP. We're going to use the ID, comma, go back to VLOOKUP on the other page and highlight the first 3 columns. You can highlight all the columns you want. You're only counting to that 3rd column. Okay. So highlight the first 3, comma. There's only 3 in that one to technology, comma, and false. Okay. Is anybody having any issues following along with me with the VLOOKUP? Do you have any questions for me? Okay. Okay, hit enter. It pops up over here. Now, before I move on, like I said, I'm going to add if it has an error, this is what it's going to say. So we're going to, right where the equal sign is, we're going to do if error, have a parentheses. So it now starts an if error formula. You'll come down to the other side of VLOOKUP at the very end and hit a comma. And now what do we want it to say? Let's say no technology. Making sure I spelled that right. In parentheses, hit enter. And so another thing I might not have mentioned yesterday is when you have it filtered, on Tuesday, sorry, I keep referring to yesterday, on Tuesday, when you have an item filtered and you're doing a formula like VLOOKUP or any type of formula, don't double click it. So if it's actually filtered, don't double click. If it's not filtered out, where you're not looking at something specific, you can double click and drop it down. So if you are looking at, only those in Arizona, then you would want to drag the item, not double click it. Okay. And there's probably a quick version of doing it on the keyboard. I don't have that memorized to tell you, but do not double click, because what can happen sometimes is if you're only trying to do it on those items that are filtered, what can happen is it could go in the background and mess up your items that are not filtered where you're looking. Okay. So be careful about that. So these are all done. And we're going to right click, copy, right click, paste values only. And then any of them, like we discussed, that have zeros, those are on the file but have no technology, but they're not errors. So that's okay. And then we know the one that have errors are supposed to say no technology. So let's see. We can either type that in the search bar right here and say no, or we can look for it. So no technology, hit OK. So we had this many that were not on the page whatsoever, on the other page. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, awesome. I just wanted to make sure y'all understood how to do that, because it will probably come in handy more often than you think. Okay. So back to the second day page, I'm going to show you how to insert a pivot table and do some basic pivot table information, and go from there. Oh, real quick, before we do that, I wanted to show you some formatting things that just in case, because I know it would be useful for y'all. So one of the things that I have to deal with sometimes in my job is to reformat the dates. So if you highlight your date area, go to the Home tab and the number area for formatting, do a drop down, go to More Number Formats, go to Custom, and a lot of times they ask for us to do year, month, and day. Okay, so it is going to read it as a text slash a date, if that makes sense. It's date, but it's formatted into a text. And now it's changed to this direction. So the years are first, the month, and then the days. Okay, and that's how we usually turn in our reports where I work. So another thing is we sometimes have numbers. Ignore that this is a commission amount, but sometimes we have numbers that have to have leading zeros. And we go to the number area, go to More Number Formats, Custom, and usually it's a set amount of numbers. And then you have to have, if you don't fill up the entire number area for that set amount, you have to add leading zeros. So in this case, most of our numbers have 4. So let's say we're going to have 5 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is typed in, Custom, and then hit OK. And as you can see, it puts a leading zero on anything that doesn't have a 5th digit already. Okay. And you can, when you save it as text limited or anything like that to turn into items like that, it will save like that. Okay. All right, I'm gonna just yeah, there we go. Go back to that. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the second day. I just undid all that just so I can show you all that. And we're gonna turn this into a pivot table. So the idea of a pivot table is to be able to combine data and look at it different ways. So we're gonna highlight. Also, sorry, with the pivot table, you have to have, every column has to have a header. It has to be written in there. You might not have anything in the column, but you have to have a header on it if you choose that as part of your pivot table. So A through H, and then go to Insert, go to Pivot Table, and this is where you can choose. So you can adjust your table range at this point. You can, if you forget to highlight, you can type in your table range right here. If you don't want to include H, you can back out of it and include only G. But I'm wanting to include all of them. You can put it on the existing worksheet you're working on, or you can put it on a new one. I prefer to put it on a new one usually, because usually my worksheets are full, and so I don't have anywhere to really work on it. So I usually do on a new worksheet, and then hit OK. And this is what pops up. Over here it says pivot table 1, and then over here to the right it says pivot table fields. Okay. So what we can do, I'm going to show you just a couple of things. The idea is to drag your fields down into these little areas down here. Okay. So you have a filter area. The filter area does not actually show up on this area over here. It is one that pops up and you filter it only. So you won't have a column or a row with that information on it. You just might be looking at that data to review the other information, if that makes sense. So it's almost like an if then. If this is filtered, then this is what's going to show up, if that makes sense. Your rows, of course, your rows will come down this way, whatever's in your row area. Your columns, they'll go across. So trick, if you have a lot of numbers, don't put them on the columns, because what happens is this, it goes across. It's a lot of details. That is not something you want to put on columns, okay? You might want to group them, but you don't want to put them that way. If you do rows, you can see them all up and down. So that makes more sense. If you're wanting to see how many people actually did different sales, then you could do it like this. Now, names on the rows, if you want to. It will, if you do that, it will make it unduplicated. That's an unduplicated count. It looks at everyone specifically. Now, if you try to do a value with that, it will not. It will actually double it up. So if you had multiple of the same names and you put the name in the values as well, a count, it will add up that second name. Okay. So there's that. And then the values is the actual values. You can count, you can sum, you can look at the average, you can do percentages, you can do standard deviation. You can do a lot of stuff with the values. Obviously, you need to know what you're looking for. But yes, you can do a ton of different things with the values. So real quick, we're going to review a lot of this to kind of see what happens. So I'm going to drag the name down. And that reminds me, to get the information out of the fields, you just grab it and throw it back up here. Okay, so you just grab it to drag it down to your area, you grab it to get rid of it. I will say, if you filter anything, you might want to unfilter before you move on to your next item. So if you bring your name down here, and let's say you don't want to include Carol, these two Carols here, hit OK. If you go to drag it back up, you notice this little filter thing here. Oh, that's weird. It stays on. It's still filtered. So you would want to remove the filter. So let's see. So clear the filter. Also, if you notice, I click in the cells, everything disappears over to the right. You have to be in the pivot table area to be able to have your fields pop up. That's the same way with up here. Your little additional tabs will only show up if you're in the pivot table area. So make sure you're in there to be able to work on your pivot table. Okay, so we're going to drag the names down, and then let's include still employed over in the columns. So now you have the names and the yes or no and the blank of the still employed. You can remove the blank lines if those are not important to you. If for some reason you know for a fact you don't want them on there, you can filter out blanks. So just remove the blank. Same thing here. You can remove the blank. pivot tables will automatically put a grand total on the right and on the sides, on the right side and the bottom side, so on the rows and the columns, if you have something in the column. Okay, so you don't actually have to put something in the column. You can just put it in the value, and it forms a column for you. Okay, so if you have something in the column area, you do have to, it will end up having a grand total on both sides. You do not have to have the grand total on your pivot table. Up here at the pivot table, analyze, click it. There's a whole lot of options. I'll go through those in a minute. And then the design is where you can go to the grand total, subtotals, and grand totals. Click grand totals, and then you can turn them off. Off for rows and columns, on only for rows, on only for columns. And this is how you clean up your pivot table to make it look look better for someone else to use. Okay. So another part over here is you can do a report layout of different forms. You can do an online outline form, a tabular form, or a compact form. So tabular form is kind of nice because it actually puts the lines in there. You can outline form is what I think is the standard, and then the compact form as well. So, and then you can also fix it like a table. So you can choose your own changes. Let's say you want to do it like this or this or this. Just like a table, you can make your own choices on what you would like it to look like. Okay. All right. So let's add a value. So let's say these are the who are still employed. Okay. And let's see what their sales are. Okay. The sum of their sales, okay, that are employed. So in this situation right now, it's kind of looks like the spreadsheet we just did. We already have, but you're able to filter and look at it for those who are yes or no, and you can look at it a little bit different. Okay. Let's see. You can also change the value settings. So this is where you would change the formatting, like I said, the number setting, the value settings. Over, you would click on the sum of sales and then choose, show that again, sorry. Choose field value settings, and then you can choose count. So if you're doing like using the actual ID of somebody or the number of employees, etc., then you would use count and not sum, of course. You could use average, max, minimum, product, count numbers, etc. Okay, we're going to keep using sum in this case, and then show values as, and you could do grand total, column total, etc. So let's do grand total for the fun of it, and then you can see it changes the percentages for you. Okay, we're going to go back over here to field value settings, and let's change it to rank largest to smallest. So this is not showing the amount, is actually ranking it for you. Okay, for the sum of the sales. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to show values as. I'm going to go back to the top and do no calculation. And so I'm going to show you a couple of things. So right now we have sum of sales on here, and we have still employed. I'm going to show that if you remove still employed, you have the sum of sales. You can also drag the sales down here and change, and you'll have two rows of the sum of sales, but then you can change that second one to average. And then you can drag another one down, and you can change that third one to percent. And then you have the percentage. So you can have something presented to somebody with all the different options sitting in front of them with about one thing, and it makes it a little bit easier. Okay. Now it's easier to do it like this with 3 columns than it is to have a column item and then multiple value options. Okay. Now let's say I want to filter on there. Okay. I'm trying to watch the time. So if it gets to 9:15, just let me know and I will stop. So let's say we're looking at certain states. So we're going to pull the states down. And over here, you see the filter popped up over here. We're going to filter. And let's say we don't want to see Maine or Oregon or Virginia. And then hit OK. And you can see all of those people who are in those areas have disappeared. And that sale amount has been taken away as well. Okay. All right. So so that's a couple options there. You can sort your information just like you were sorting a table. So you can, so right here, if I'm clicking on row labels and I hit sort, it's going to sort this row. If I click on it and click more sort options, it'll give me this pop-up box and it'll give you all the options on here. Okay. So let's say you want the sum of the sales ascending and hit OK. And so it's not going to be an alphabetized over here anymore. It's just going to be based off of this column here. Okay. All right. So, and now as you can see, I'm off of the pivot table. The information is moved. You can't see how to adjust it. Click back on, it pops back up. Now, another cool thing you can do is, let's say you don't want the state to be filtered. You have to click select multiple items, unfilter it, hit OK. And then let's say instead of having a filter, I want to see who actually lives in what state. You drag the state down to above the name. If you put it below the name, it's per the name and where they are. In this situation, it's where the state and then who is in it. Okay, so you have to think about what you're looking at. So Arkansas, we have Graham Chapman. Arizona, we have Terry Jones and Eric Cleese. So here we go. Of course, like I said, there's some weird ones going on here. So you see that, and of course, this is also the one that I did not remove duplicates. I left the duplicates on there. So you can see that those showed up a couple of different times on here. Okay. So this is also a situation where if you have subtotals, so the subtotals, like right here, you can't really see it. Let me go back up here to, it all depends on how it looks. Here we go. Make some more colors go on there. Okay, so in this case, the subtotals would be referring to, if you wanted subtotals to keep subtotals, it would be the other item that's on the row. So this other item that is grouping the information, that would include the subtotals. If you go to design and go to subtotals, you can click do not show subtotals and it'll remove them. I want to make sure you could see that. It was kind of hard to see with the other colors. So yeah, so if you have a second item on your rows, it will form a subtotal. Okay. Now you can also add, let's say you want to add those that fall under a commission. Let's do percentage commission. And now you know those who made the 3% commission and who is living in Arizona, who is living in California, Florida, Idaho, all made, those people made 3%, and you know, you can separate them out. So it's another layer that you're seeing. Okay. All right. So I just want to make sure, I'm trying to go slow so y'all kind of are seeing what options are available out there. Okay, I'm going to remove commission by pulling up and dropping it out. I'm going to remove state by pulling up and dropping it out. And then I'm going to remove name by pulling up and dropping it off. So I'm going to pull the date of employment down and put it in rows. And you can see by this, what they'll do is it'll actually separate it out a little bit. So the date of employment, so those who started in 1995, and then on what quarter they started and what month they started. So it'll kind of break it down sometimes. If you want to know who those are, you can put them underneath. And then you can see. So name underneath, you can see who actually started at those times. And here we go. And like I said, you can have also subtotals on, all of them on, and then you can see the subtotal answers. Okay. All right. So gonna clear that. I'm gonna actually just delete this pivot table by removing the sheet. I'm gonna go back to my second day. I'm gonna insert a new pivot table. And I want to show you a couple of things and a couple of more things. And then the next one, I'll do another pivot table in just a few minutes, a different pivot table, and kind of walk you through on that one. So another thing you can have on here, I'm going to do still employed over to the left, and commissions on the columns, and sales as the value, sum of sales. Okay. So another thing you can do is there's something called a slicer. So you would go up to the pivot table, analyze, make sure that's clicked, and click insert slicer. And a slicer, what it does, it makes it easier to filter. It's an optional filtering option. It's kind of one of those things you kind of got to get used to just playing with, and then it probably will become something like your best friend. I don't use it very often, but that's because I just play with the regular pivot table. But let's say I want to know the states and date of employment. Okay, so the slicer pops up. You can make it larger. Sorry, didn't mean to do that. You can make it larger, so you can see everything if you want to. And what this is it's showing you your options. If you click this little box, it kind of holds it together. If you unclick it and you click anything, it clicks that one. So if you click it, it holds everything together and you're removing it. So if I want to remove Arkansas, I would click it and remove Arkansas. If I only wanted Arkansas, I'd unclick it and then click Arkansas only. Okay. And so it's filtering the information over here by using your slicer. And this little box here is now clearing the filter and going back to the plain. Okay. Same thing with the date here. I'd click the checkbox, and then maybe I don't want any of the 1995 people on there. So those numbers should be adjusting based off of that. Maybe the 2001s I don't want, and maybe the 2004s. So those all are adjusting. You don't have to keep the slicers here. That would be more for, I think most people would probably use them for, it helps you visualize what is going on. If you're trying to figure out why things are happening, you can kind of play with the filtering of those options of your information. And then you can get rid of it if you want to, but the filter stays there. So you can right click, remove date of employment, right click, remove state. Okay, and the filter is still there. If there's a filter on. So you see right here, and that's how you know. And you go back over here, you click over here, and you can see if that little interesting thing is still there. And sorry, my mouse, it's so close to the edge, I guess is why it's doing that. If that filter area is still there, that means there is a filter on. So to be careful, if you ever are working and you're like, why is that number low? Look over here and see if you have any filters turned on still. Okay. You can go to, let's see, I guess you just have to, yeah. So you could go to your data area and then hit clear and you take all your filters off. I was thinking there was one under the pivot table area, but it's not. So, oh, it's 9:15. So we'll take a break, come back at 9:30, and we'll go over some more pivot table information. Okay. We'll stop sharing. See y'all back.
This is just so great. I appreciate it, Mary Kate.
No problem. Okay. All right. Well, I'll get to share my screen again. And okay, we got it. Okay. All right. Does everybody see my screen still right now? Hopefully. Okay. Says it says you can, so hopefully you can. Good. Thank you. All right. So I've changed to the pivot tables training workbook file. So if you want to open that file up, if you're following along, you can. Just wanted to throw out a different pivot table to work with and give you some more tips on pivot tables. You would think that this is something that you wouldn't need a lot of training on. However, there are a lot of options with pivot tables, and most people, when they start using them, they get a little nervous. So I want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to see the options that are available that won't make you, so it's not as nerve-wracking to use. So one thing I was going to try to do is give you an example of a question. Obviously, you all probably won't have to deal with this specifically, but if someone came to you and asked you a question, you would want to try to answer it. And let's relate to this specific table. So this one includes centers, dates, and it has volume. Don't know what the volume is. It doesn't really matter, but it has something that can be added up. So let's say your boss comes to you and says, I want the total volume for all the centers, and I want them organized by year. Doesn't ask by date, doesn't say what day of the week is their best volume done, created or whatever. But let's just do that. Okay. So total volume for the centers by year. Okay. So we're going to, so a quick way is I have this table already created, full of information. So I'm going to highlight the information. And actually, if it's a table, you actually can just go to insert pivot table and it'll pull up your table name. If it's created into a table, you don't really have to highlight it because it's already grouped as a table. So I have my table. I'm going to go to new worksheet and hit OK. And like I said, total volume for the centers by year. Okay. So there's a couple of ways to do that. You can pull the center down to rows, grab the volume and throw it into values and make sure it says sum. You always just have to double check. Sometimes it'll change it to count when you want it to be sum automatically, or it might change it to sum when you want it to be count. Okay. So just double check what it is right here before you move on. And then the year. And you can do it by columns, or you can do it by, but all the items are on the rows. So you have your answers. That there, you have now created that. You didn't have to do any formulas. It's all sitting there. You copy and paste it and send an email to your boss, and you're like, I'm done. That's what they asked for. So I know that might not be something that you all have to do in that specific type of thing with volume, but I wanted you to see how easy something that if you were at this spreadsheet, you would have to go, okay, so 2014, or hey, so let's do some adding over here and I'd have to do this or that. So the pivot table makes it quicker and faster and makes it easier for you, for anybody to use. You can also send that actual file to them, and you can teach them how to do pivot tables and adjusting that themselves if they need to, as long as they understand. So just wanted to show you that. Another thing I was going to try to show is, how to refresh. So let's say you're in the middle, you have created your table, you're now on your pivot table, you're working, and you realize you have messed up a couple of rows, or you've messed up and you need to add a new column because now you need to know something new. So let's say you need to add a new column. So you can right click, insert columns to the left, and you can name it, I don't know, let's say new information in new info, and you can just say, I don't know, I'm just going to put a couple of random numbers just to kind of show you. So new info is a new column in the table. And so now I need to be able, and over here to the left, over to the right, you can see that it's not here. So let's say I need to be able to pull that data in. So you'll go up to Pivot Table Analyze, and right here is refresh. So you can refresh all, just click refresh, and you know it's been refreshed when this has been updated over here. Now, if for some reason you're just fixing something in your table, you click refresh, and then you come over and you can double check that item. So if you know, if like one of these numbers is super, super low and you're like, that doesn't make sense, or ends up being letters instead of numbers, that doesn't make sense either. You can make your adjustments, refresh, and then come back to how you were looking, and you will know if it's been updated or not. So you just grab new info, throw it in column, and there you go. Hope that makes sense. Okay. All right. So that's refresh. Change data source. So let's say you need to add a couple of columns. So outside of the square. So in this situation, you're in a table. So it will be added, you have to add it a certain way. It formats to a table. But let's say I'm going to go back to our other file that we're at. Let's say we're back here and I want to add new info 1, new info 2, etc. So I'm going to go to this pivot table, table analyze, and go to change data source. And you can either go back and re-highlight, or you can just change data source by clicking and changing the information if you know what cells to pipe in. Usually I just highlight, it makes my life easier. But like I said, you still have to make sure your header has a word in it. So even if you don't have data in the actual rows, your header has to be combined into that pivot table. Okay, hit OK, come back over here, and those two have been added. Okay, so that's just right up here in the analyze of the pivot table next to refresh, change data source. Okay. All right. So you can also clear your, I'm gonna go back to that other file. So we're back on the pivot tables for training. Sorry about that. And now we're back at our actual pivot table. And so I want to show you a few more things that fall under that pivot table analyze label. So you can actually name your pivot table. So if you have multiple pivot tables on one page, or if you're wanting to direct someone to a specific pivot table, you can do that. I usually just keep one pivot table on one page, and I name the sheet pivot table for whatever it is, or pivot for blah, blah, blah. And that usually helps. Now, it all depends on how your company works and what makes it easier for other people. You can also do some other type of options on here. You could do a classic pivot table layout, enables dragging of fields to the grid. That's, I think they're like an older version. Layout and format. You can merge and center cells with labels. You can do all this kind of things through this optional tab here. If you don't, and that's up to you, you can kind of go through and try to see what does what on that. Let's see. You can group select. So that's one thing I was looking at. I've never really used group select before. It's kind of interesting. You can, let's say right now it's grouped. Oh, sorry. Let's say we can ungroup it. Right now it's kind of grouped in this little group here. And you can ungroup it if you do it. So right now, yeah, it's kind of weird. Let me show you more with a date. A date's better. So let me do this. Date. Okay, so there we go. So I'm going to go back so you can see that. So right now the date is grouped by year, quarter, and month, and that is an automatic type grouping that occurs. However, if for some reason you want to see the actual date, which is one of the things I didn't know you could do. Like I have this happen to me all the time. So I've been learning. I have to learn things just like y'all do. I have to look up things all the time to try to figure out what's new, what I have never used before. But you can click ungroup, and then you can see those dates. So then you're not dealing with that grouping. If you're not wanting to look about a quarter, you want an actual date, then that helps you. You can look at those dates that way by clicking ungroup. Okay, and then as far as I know, you should be able to highlight all those again and group selection, and now it's grouped in a group format of group 1. Okay, instead of actually grouping it back into its information. So, okay. Let's see. So the slicer, we talked about the slicer. Insert a slicer, choose, certain things to filter by, and you can do that. Let's see, move that. Go back to the pivot table. Okay, clear. If you want to clear all, this pivot table report is based on the same data, at least one pivot table report. Clearing the pivot table report will remove the following from all reports. It removes all those. Clear pivot table. It's cleared everything. You're back to your normal. So you don't actually have to like restart a pivot table. You can clear it and start all over again if you want to. Yeah. Let's see. You can move pivot table. You can move it to another worksheet, to a new worksheet, to an existing worksheet, etc. You can make pivot charts. We'll get into that in a few minutes. If you don't like having this field, if you have like slicers everywhere, if you use slicers, you can get rid of this table field by clicking, taking this out here, and that makes it, cleaner for you while you're working on it. If you're in design, we've talked about the subtotals. The subtotals only show up whenever you have multiple items in rows or multiple items on columns. So it's up to you if you want the subtotal on there. Grand totals the same way, except for they're there all the times if you had anything adding. Let me show you this. Center, and then if I want to count how many lines, see it pops up count of center. That's how many lines that is marked with that center. Okay, so there's 730 lines per rows per center. Okay, I don't think I showed you one with count. So, so the grand total here obviously is the count of the amount of centers, about basically the amount of rows on the table. Okay, you can add banded when you're basically doing a style, which is a more fun part to it. I hardly ever mess with the style because I'm just wanting the information. And most of the time I'm not presenting a pivot table to somebody. I'm just trying to get the answer and handing it off to them. But if you were somebody that has to present using a pivot table, then you might want to start styling it yourself. Might create your own style, might have certain colors for your company you can work on and make it look better for y'all. Okay. All right. So let's go down to, let's see, where I'm going to go over these instructions with you so we can actually work on some pivot tables together. So click the cell in the Excel. Let's see, I'm going to erase E so it's gone. It says click a cell in the Excel table in sheet 1 and create a pivot table based on the data, which we will do. We're going to insert pivot table. Just click it and then it'll pop up the name of the spreadsheet of the table and hit OK. And then it's wanting you to add the year field to the columns area and the center field to the rows area and volume to the values area. Okay. So year to columns, center to rows, and volume to field values. That's what it's wanting you to do there. Pivot the pivot table so the year field is above the center field in the rows area. So above the center field, so we'll take the year and move it over to above the center, and that's how that works. So any questions about that? Okay. All right. So this is a pivot table that's already set up. It's using the same information from here. And this is just another version of what we've been working on. Since we already have month in here, it says using the month field, create a selection filter that displays data for January, April, and July. So this is trying to get you to make sure you understand how to filter in this. So we're going to only display January. So I'm going to unselect all, click January, April, and July, and hit OK. So that's filtering for this specific months. Then we're going to clear the filter by clearing, and then add the weekday field to the filters area and limit the data shown to Tuesday. Looks like that was already done. So we will select multiple items, unselect all, and click Tuesday. Okay. And we can create a slicer for the month field and then display values for the month of December. So we're going to pivot table analyze, click insert slicer, and we're going to look at the months, hit OK, and then it says only for December. So we can actually just click December and it should only pop it up. Okay, and then you can click the little check marks and then go up and click January, and it'll add January to it. And before we get out of the slicer, let's say we want to get rid of the filter, we clear the filter, right click the slicer, and remove month, which is the slicer. Okay. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. You've been learning a little bit about editing pivots, formatting pivots. Let's see, I'm trying to decide what else I want to show you real quick before we move on to another one. Nobody has any questions for me yet so far on these. All right. Okay, just want to make sure because I know he said that he's going to have y'all do some. So I want to make sure before we go on to the next set. Okay. All right, so let's do a pivot chart. And what a pivot chart is we're going to talk about pivot charts and also work on charts at the same time. Okay. So one benefit to a pivot table is you can create a pivot chart. It's basically just your regular chart, but it's using the pivot, the information from your data, and you can adjust it like a pivot table. Okay. So we're going to click on, so right now I'm on the pivot charts tab on the pivot tables training Excel workbook. And I'm going to go up to insert pivot table and hit OK. This is what I prefer to do. I prefer to insert a pivot table and then create a chart off of it. Okay, that's just my choice because I want to see what I'm working with and then move from there. So I would like to see a chart with the center and the volume by year. Okay. So center rows, year columns, volume is the values. Okay. Let's see how this goes. So in the pivot table analyze tab, if you're clicked on the pivot table, over to the right, you'll see one that says pivot chart. If you click it, it'll show you some options on what your chart might look like with the information you have. Okay. Let's just do a column chart. And so I'll hit OK. And you can see how that shows up. So one cool thing, and I'm going to show you more about charts in a little bit, but I wanted to start with this is we're working on pivot tables first. So one cool thing is working in a pivot chart, you can actually adjust the information inside here. So you can filter as you're looking at it. So if you're presenting this and someone goes, I don't care about the central division or the central center. Can you get rid of that? That I don't want to see it. They're making me mad. The right here where it says center, click the arrow down, go over, unclick central, hit OK, and it's removed from the spreadsheet from the chart. Same thing over here. If they don't want to see the 2014, you can down click, unclick 2014, hit OK, and it's gone. If you don't want it to be the sum, I guess it doesn't really do that. I guess you have to, oh, here you go. You right click on it, value field settings, do average, hit OK, and it's now the average.
Is this a situation where under the year you could ungroup first and then you could select by day?
Well, in this case, I chose year only because of the fact, but yes, you could. If you did the date instead, you should be able to do that. It would group it for you and do that. I would probably personally, to make sure I wouldn't, and just in case if I was working with a lot of people, I would have the year separated from the date. But if you wanted by day, I would just remove year over and then grab the day and drag it to there. And then now you can see what the day looks like because it's per day.
Okay. I know you showed us how to ungroup earlier and then it showed it by day. So I didn't know if it would provide a different option.
Gotcha.
Hopefully
I am. You're welcome. You're welcome. So I'm going to drag the year back down. You see the different years. Let's clear filter. And then it is, and like I said, it's moving with you. So it does, I don't know if you saw that little lag time. I'm sure that happens depending on the data and how big your Excel spreadsheet is as well. So I wanted to show you that before we go into more information on charts. Like I said, with the pivot table, you can adjust everything. You can adjust it in the chart or you can adjust it in the pivot table for the chart, if that makes sense. Does anybody have any more questions related to charts and pivot tables? Okay, all right. Trying to make sure I go over everything. So just a second on. Okay, all right. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go to the our chart training spreadsheet or workbook. Sorry. And we will start at the beginning. So one of the things I have a problem with personally is knowing exactly what chart I need to use in certain situations. And for y'all, you might be able to know that. I think a lot of that has to do with experience. So on here, I did add a couple of screenshots so you have a little bit of information to kind of help you get through what you would end up wanting to use a chart for and what kind of chart. Most of my go-tos are box, or column charts or bar charts and then line charts. I do use pie charts sometimes, but I went to a training one time and the guy was absolutely against pie charts. So I have this in the back of my mind not to ever use pie charts. But there's always a place for different types of charts. So that is a lot of just experience, I think, more than anything. Reading on it, trying to figure out what would work best, but then the experience. Because you don't only want to have a chart that looks good, you want to have a chart that makes sense. You don't want to have a chart that doesn't show your data correctly. Okay. So anyway, so I just wanted to show you that I did include that kind of thing on here. If you have any questions, you can go back and refer to that. So I want to kind of show you how to create any type of chart first, and then we're going to go through and look at each kind of chart. And I will start up at 10:15, and then we'll continue after that at 10:30 on some more. So this one, we're going to just start with a regular column chart. This just goes over years and volume. So I'm going to highlight the item, go over to Insert tab. And I usually, what I like to do, instead of trying to figure out what each of these mean, I just usually click recommended charts. It pops up a big chart display, and then you can go off of what they suggest, works for what is on there, what Excel is looking at, or you can click all charts and choose what you want to use. Okay. So usually I already know what I'm going for, but every once in a while that recommended chart's nice because it's like, oh, I could use that. I didn't realize I could use that for this. That kind of thing. So, so all charts, we'll just do this one as a column chart. It first shows you just some different ways. You can click on each of these items to see what options are available and what it will look like with the data that you already have. A lot of times it will, sometimes it won't really show that, but most of the time it will. It'll show exactly what it's going to look like when you click on it. And that's kind of helpful. So let's click on this one here and then hit OK. Okay. And I'm going to go over some basic items that a chart will, that you can do to change a chart and make it look better. And note that obviously what I'm going to show you, you can expand on in so many ways. Okay. So we're going with a bar chart here. It's showing by year all the way up. And then how much the volume is. So in this situation, they made more volume as it went up each year, which is great. So one thing you could probably add to this one is a trend line. And that's probably not normal to do, but I thought it would be kind of cool, but it didn't show up the way I was thinking it would. But either way, you could add a trend line if you wanted to, depending on the type of chart you're working on or what you want to look at. You can add axis titles. Okay. Right here, because of how I did it, it did not pull the axis titles over. So right now the axes are here and here. The titles would show up at the bottom. And I'll show you how to adjust those in a minute. You can click this little arrow here and you can choose which one you want to actually have. If you don't want the vertical, you can remove it. If you don't want the horizontal, or if you do want the vertical instead of the horizontal. Okay. Same thing with here with axes. Same thing. You might have numbers. You want the numbers below. You might not. You might, want it like that without the numbers. Depends on your situation, because you could do this and then add the labels and not have the numbers on the side. Okay. So I'm going to leave these up so then it's not like weird. So chart title, you can have the chart title there. You can not have it. It's up to you on that. You can move it around. You can have more options and make some more changes to it. You can grab it and move it over to the left. You can keep it in the center. Okay. Go back to the plus. You can add a data table to the bottom of it. So if you're somebody that somebody goes, I want to have a data table on all my charts that you send, on the charts you send me, you can add that. I don't know why that's important when you have it right over on the same page usually, but you could do that. You can unclick data table. You could do error bars if it had a situation that error bars make sense on it. Grid lines. So your grid lines are the lines that go behind the information. You can have those available. You can choose different versions of them and unchoose them. You can also adjust their formatting, some more items to it in just a minute. I'll show that to you, but those are the options you can start off with. Okay. And like I said, the legend, you can move the legend around. You can put it on the right side, top, left. It usually sets it where some random place, and then you have to decide if you want it there or not, but you can choose where you want it, and then you can also move it. You can click on it and move it around. You can also adjust the size of the information that's on there as well. Okay. Also, if you don't really like the color scheme, if you want it to look a little bit different, if this gives you a couple options here that's already set up and presented by Excel. So I hate this. So that'd be hard to see, having to turn my head. This is kind of neat. It'd be hard to see on certain backgrounds, so have to be careful with that. This is kind of neat here as well. As you notice, this one didn't have the axes on the left, just the name, but that has information on it. Same here, a lighter color scheme. And here's a dark background. And almost all of them have at least one dark background now. But this gives you options on where to start, and then you can adjust based on that, depending on what you prefer. We like on some of ours, we usually use, especially pie charts, we'll do like a 3D look because it looks different and neater, I guess. But that's this is a 3D here, I think. Yeah, it's a little bit 3D there. So that gives you options. So if you know what you kind of want it to look like and you don't want to have to go through all the trouble of doing a lot of work to it, you can at least pick on one and then go from there. Okay. Color scheme, same way. You can kind of go through here and choose the color scheme. Oh, there's a fall color scheme. Isn't that nice? And go from there. You can do all the same color. And this helps you so then you're not having to do all the changes in the legend area over here. Okay. And then there's also a little note here, how to change the theme colors. There you go. All right. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go from here. And so one of my things I do is if there's something I want to change, I click on it and then I look in the format area over to the right, and that shows me how to format it. Okay. So let's say I don't like the font on here. Of course, now this is all going to show up this way. Usually when you click on it, it clicks on all of them. So I'm going to, oh, come on. Okay, we're just going to do it this way then. So over to the right, you'll see the data labels, and you can choose each of them. So the text, fill options, text outline, if you want to have it look a little bit different. You can choose how to change the font. There it goes. Come on. There it is. You can change the font. And usually, like I said, you usually can do it all together. So I think I'll do this. Yeah, there it goes. So you can do the entire thing with the same font, and you can change it by clicking the entire chart and then go up to the left and choose your font change. You can make everything bigger. However, if you're wanting to make like just the labels smaller, then you would have to click on each one. Usually, like I said before, every once in a while, you'll click on it and it'll all pull all of them up at the same time. But I guess because of how it's set up with the different years, it's not going to do that right now. Okay, so you can also change the feel of the font to a different color. You can, so that's the same thing with these. Each of the actual columns, you can change the color. So if you're someone that is, okay, I want to change this to just a little bit orangier or something, you can click on the actual column and go over to this here and choose a different color. You can change the transparency right here. You can pattern fill it, of course. You know, you can play with it a lot. You can do automatic again, and that'll keep it into automatic information. The border's the same way. You can adjust the border. You can have no line. You can have no fill. So it's like white. You can have automatic, and then you can have gradient line, which the gradient line obviously you got to be careful with because you probably can't see it if you want to be able to see it. You can change the thickness around it. Basically, you would just play with this to make it how you would like it to be. So you can also do shadows, glow, the soft edges in that 3D format. So that if it's 3D, if it's truly 3D, you have to adjust the items, you know, if you want to. You could do a bevel here or there. So there's that. You can undo that too. You can change where the series, the plot series is on and move it around. So we'll go from the top in this chart area so you kind of have an idea about what everything is. The chart area includes the actual entire chart area. So if you adjust it here over to the right, here, let me make this a little different because it's because of how close I am to the edge. That's the issue. Okay, so if you adjust this up and down, then it's going to move the entire chart. If you want to keep things a certain width or height, you can do lock ratio and then move up and down. Okay. Let's see. All right. Chart title. Let's say you want to adjust the font and stuff like that and how it looks in the chart title. You can do that here. If you have this larger, you can change the vertical alignment in this area here. Okay. Different axes. This is the actual text options. The title, text options on those as well. Same type of thing. Like I said, the font, if you want something's font changed, you just have to click on the item and then change the font and size. You just can adjust the color and everything like that over here. Okay. All right. Let's see, grid lines. Grid lines is an interesting one. I've had my boss a couple of times go, hey, I want the grid lines gone, or I want more grid lines. On major grid line options, you can click no line and they're gone. So you just have to click on here and look for the actual grid lines area. Okay. And like I said earlier, if you want something to change, go back this way a little bit. If you want it where it has a lot of lines, then you would go to the grid line here and it makes it easier to do them here. So there's a lot there. And then do the more options. Just solid lines, and then you can actually click on each line set too. So you're clicking on this one for the major grid lines, and then these other ones for minor. And then you can do no line or solid line or gradient line. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the formatting? Just some simple formatting. Like I said, you can adjust this a ton of different ways to your preferences. And this is just your basic formatting for this style chart. Some of the other charts will have other formatting options because of how they're created. Okay. All right. Well, I know I might be a little early on this one, but why don't we go ahead and take a break before we go into the other actual styles of charts. And I guess if Dawn's okay with it, say return at 10:25, I guess. What does everybody think?
Sure. Okay.
Okay. All right. We'll do that and then we'll get back on the other ones. All right. Thanks. Hey, Dawn, can you pause? If you record, then I can't pause. So.
Yeah, I just came back in. So pause and we're
Okay.
going on break.
Yes. Yeah, just for a little bit, if that's okay. They'll be back at 10:25.
No problem. 10:25.
Okay. All right. Do you want? All
All
right.
right.
Thank
Take it away,
you.
Mary Kate. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Okay. So I'm going to show you a couple of more things on this chart. I was mainly showing the formatting, of course, which I know some of you probably already knew how to do some of that, but some people don't. I know a lot of times that I have to take a lot of time trying to format something because of where the border is, etc. So I thought it might be helpful for y'all. Okay. So the other item is maybe, oh, let me start here. So at the top of on the top of the Excel spreadsheet of the Excel document, at the top, the tab chart design also shows you a lot of the options we just went over. You can change your chart styles up here, and over on format, you can do like lines, etc., that kind of thing. So, and it'll adjust as you click on something. So as you click on something, you can do your formatting up here in the format area as well. And as I've said, just like the pivot table, you have to be clicked into the chart to actually get the chart design and format options on the tabs. Okay. So if you click on chart design, one of the quick ways to change your data or your rows or your your axes is to look up here on the data area, and you can switch row or column. Okay, so if you click it, you can actually just switch them. Okay, and it gives you a couple options there when you do that. If you want to back up to how it was before, you can do that. You can click select data, and this is another option. So one of the questions yesterday involved how do you add another column to your data? So if you click select data right here, chart data range, and then update the data range. If you have to add another line, another column, that should help. That should start. You hit OK or hit apply, and it should help figure that out. It should change here on this area here. If you want to switch the rows with the columns, it's pretty simple, but not always exactly simple. So you would click switch row column and see what happens. If it's not what you're wanting, then you might have to adjust a few things. Okay, and then hit OK. But it all depends on what you're wanting it to look like. But that is the area where you would do that. You would make those changes here. Okay. You can also edit by clicking edit, and then you can change the series name for a specific area and then the value. So for 2009, it would be that one. For the value, it would be that. So if you wanted to change to a different group, hit cancel. If you wanted to look at the 2010, you click edit and then look at the 2010 information. Okay. If for some reason you didn't like using the 2010 as series name, then you would adjust it here, or you would have another column and choose which one was the series name. Okay. I hope that makes sense. All right. So we're going to look at each of that, when we go through each type of chart, we'll look at how to adjust those that information. So let's start with waterfall. So at the bottom of this, let's click the tab for waterfall. And I'm going to just read. Remember earlier I said at the front, this is which chart. I'm going to read this information as we go to each one. So then we kind of process why they use this information to create the specific chart. Okay. So a waterfall chart, you would usually use it for when you want to show the effect of positive and negative contributions on financial data. I've never used one of these before because I'm not a financial person. So when I created it the other day, I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. It shows how it starts to look big and then it goes up and down and then it goes lower, if that makes sense. So, all right, we're going to highlight the entire chart, entire table, go to insert, you can go to recommended charts and then all charts, and then you can click waterfall. Okay. And then hit OK. One thing that's interesting about this one is you can actually, we included the total here, but it doesn't always pick up that this is a total. So if you double click on it, it's supposed to work. If you double click on it, let's see, let's format. There it goes. If you double click on it, it's supposed to pop up and ask you if this is a total. So let me figure out where that goes. Everything I read said you double click on it and it pops up. So I got to figure out where that's going to come. Of course, it didn't do it when I did it this time. Maybe it's. All right, there it goes. So finally it did. So it comes up with the format data point. So I had to click on it just right. And then it pops up as set as total. And you have to click it there. And what it does is it shows you that it's actually a total. So we started with this much money. And we're down to this. So that should show you about the financial part. I thought that was kind of neat. We've lost this much here. We've lost a little bit more. Now we're back up to here. And now we lost more. And now this is what we have. Okay. And then, of course, like I said, you can adjust those, adjust how it looks by formatting, however you would like to format it. Okay. All right. Any questions about a waterfall chart? Guess I could show you the select data. And you can, in this situation, you can't really switch rows or columns because that's not how this is, how it's set up has to be set up a certain way. You can edit it and that'll, help you figure out which ones goes to which item. But other than that, you can't really switch the row and column because of how this one is created. Okay. All right. Let's go to histogram. Let's see, where's my sheet of paper for that one? Okay, a histogram is the frequency of occurrence of values within a data set. From what I understand, this is one of those if you had a lot of information and you wanted to group them and make it into a chart. So you're wanting to look at all these numbers, but you want to look at how many of them are in this group or this group or this group, and that's how that works. So you highlight the chart, which is just one big group of information. Go to insert. Go to recommended charts, all charts, histogram, and then hit OK. And then so I'm going to show you what this is referring to. At the bottom, you can see these numbers. That is the numbers that it's referring to that's in between. So the lowest number from 1,597 to the highest number of 5,797 is in this group. Okay, and there are 15 of those. And then on here, there's that many numbers. These there are in between these numbers, there are 19. In between these numbers, there are 16, etc. So let's look at select data and see if you can do anything with it there. You can hit edit, and you can adjust what actual numbers you use. So if you don't want to do all the numbers, you can adjust that. So instead of saying through 63, you can adjust it to, let's say 33, and then hit OK, and then hit OK, and you can see it cut down on some of the numbers that we were using. Okay. Like I said, depending on the chart, depends on what options you have. So you won't always have the same options for this for every chart. Okay. Also, if for some reason you're like, that's not what I want, you can always go back up here and click change chart type and look for something else that might work. Change chart type, go back up to columns. Maybe you want maybe you want to be able to see all of them. And there's that. Okay. All right. So I'll put that back to histogram so that's not confusing. in a second. And hit OK. And we will update the data to include, oops, sorry, all of that. So 63. Hit OK. Didn't look like it worked very well. So let's delete that chart. Let's do it again. Highlighted, insert, recommended charts, all charts, histogram, and hit OK. Okay. All right. So that's what a histogram looks like. Okay. Pareto. I had to look this one up a little bit. It is actually a mixture of charts. So we're going to highlight, go to insert, recommended charts. And this one's actually going to be a histogram with a trend line. And I don't have a, let me look and see what that, I don't think I have a reason on why you would use that very often, but it's usually because there's a trend line in there that you can make happen. Okay. So we can go up to the select data and you can do some editing on each area. But you're not able to switch rows, okay? And that's because of how it's created, okay? All right, any questions about those? Okay, box and whisper. That's just funny to me, box and whisper, whisker. Distribution of data within a range, including mean values, quartiles, and outliers. So I'm gonna highlight, go to insert, recommended, all charts, box and whisker, sorry. I keep saying whisker. And then bring it up. Now this one, you can do a little bit of, you can't really do much changing. You might move them up and down a little bit. You could edit the label range, but there's not much that you can do on there. It's going to be the same type of thing. It has to pull it a certain way. So when you highlight it, it has to be set up the exact way that you need it to be. All right, we'll go on to the next one, tree map. Highlight that, insert, recommended charts, all charts, tree map, and hit OK. And of course, the bigger you make this, the more you can see the words because you're making it larger enough to read. But what this is doing is comparisons of multi-level hierarchical data. So what it's doing is it's looking at your volume and then you're grouping them in three. So there's three groups. So it's grouping two categories in a region. So the ground is this one over here, has less volume than the overnight. And then it also shows the region of the volume. So a region of that area of them. Does that make sense? So this is larger because overnight has way more volume. And then over here, ground and priority overnight are less. Okay. Let's go up to, chart design. And you can adjust that to look different, obviously. And then select data. This is one of those you can't really switch the rows and columns because there's 3 columns. But I wanted you to see that in case you had any questions. Okay. All right. Let's go to sunburst. Let's highlight the data. Go to insert, recommended charts, sunburst, Hit OK. Sunburst is comparisons, multi-level hierarchical data. So basically, if you can do it for a tree map, you're probably going to be able to do a sunburst out of it. The only issue I would have with a sunburst in this situation is it is really hard to see them. You don't have a lot of options when it comes to the chart elements. You can only do so much and that's it. So let's add a legend, but you can't put the actual amounts on here for the volumes. It only lets you put the names, and that's it. And the same thing, you can't really make any switching of the rows and columns. It has to be a certain way to make it work. Back at the tree map real quick. Same thing, you don't have the options. Do a lot of element changes. Box and whisker. I just keep saying whisker. You can do some. You can add data labels, but you can't do much more. Pareto, you can add data labels and a legend and some in the titles if you need to. Histogram, you can add those. So in this case, as I mentioned earlier, this is the count of how many volumes are in that grouping. Okay, that's not, you know, the amount of volume, that's the count of the volume. Waterfall, already had added the labels, so okay. All right, back to the sunburst. Like I said, you can't do much adding. It is grouping items and it's just more of a visualization. I have a ton of these. They have more volume. It's obvious. Here we are. It's just not looking at the actual numbers. It's more of a real nice visualization to be able to see it. Okay. And then we have scatter plot. Scatter plot is a relationship between sets of values. Okay. We're wanting to figure out if there's a relationship here. So we're going to highlight this. Go to insert. And there is a scatter plot one right here. I actually know that what that one looks like. Let's go to recommended charts, all charts, scatter. And you could have one like that, or you can have one like this. So let's do this one. Hit OK. And go up to the plus. Let's add data labels. And I'm going to show you how to move those in a second because that's another formatting thing you can learn. And we'll add it, not a legend, but a trend line. This is one that you would really like to add a trend line to probably more often. Okay, so while we're here on this one, I'm going to show you how to move your data labels. So you can actually click on one, and when it pops up the white circles around it, you can grab it and move it. Click on the other, grab it, move it. You could also use your arrow keys. I know if I'm only have to move it a little bit, sometimes I'll use my arrow keys. In this case, it was really hard to see which each item was, so I'm moving them around. So I think this one goes to, yeah. Moving it around a little bit more. If you notice, there's these little lines that are popping up and moving. Right next to the circles. Those are leader lines. And there is a spot, oops, sorry. Let's see. There is a spot for leader lines to click to be able to keep them, I think. Yep, right here. So you would go to label options. So like I said before, if you're clicking on it, it usually will bring up your actual item over to the right. If you're not really sure, but you know that's called the data labels, you come over here and do more options and then click this one. You'll have to look for it, but it's a label option. and you can show your leader lines. Or if you don't like having the lines because it's it messes up your how you have created everything and made it look, you can remove them. But as you can see, there's other circles here that you might want to, you know, having that leader line might be helpful. Okay. And you can also add some more labels, series names. Like if you want to have, that's exactly, you want to include the actual name, Y, car price, and that you can add that to it. Okay. Okay, let's see. Huh, interesting. Oh, the whole thing didn't, that's what it was. You go back and fix that real quick. More options. Remove the series name from all of them. So another thing you can do is if you want your scatter plots to have look a little bit different, you can click on the actual dots, and that's on the lines or anything like that. It's kind of like the bar charts. So you're clicking on the actual item, and then you can go to the series options and you can choose, do you want a line or not? Do you want to adjust your marker? One cool thing I like about the marker options is this is where you can actually make your changes. Right now you're automatic, so the circle is automatic, but if you want to make it a triangle and make them huge, really large, then you can adjust that there. You can also change the color and the border, you know, that kind of thing. So that's one of my favorite parts about when it's not just a bar chart or a column. You can adjust those points to your liking and what would make it easier for you to see. Okay. Another question was asked yesterday, how to switch the row and the column. Now, I don't know if clicking this button is going to do what I want it to do, but let's try it. Switch row and column. If you click it, this is what it'll look like. It looks different. However, it's done what you would like it to do. So switch it back. There you go. You can do that also by selecting select data. And when you click select switch row and column, it'll do that there as well. Okay. So probably what I would do, and there's some like you can do right. I think you can right click and do some looking for that select data item. But for me, I feel like going up here to that chart design tab is the best, quickest way to do it. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. So let's go on to the next tab, which is combo. And right now we are looking at some months, homes, how many homes are sold, and the average price of those homes. But let's put, we want to add a line to it. And so this is not really the chart we need. As you can see, that doesn't really work out the way we want it to be. So let's go up here to change chart type. And then we're going to go to column. Is it column? Oh, down here at the very bottom, combo, sorry. Combo. And you can choose which one. This one probably needs to be the line. I would say this needs to be the line. I could be wrong on that. And then this one would need to be the bar. It says average price secondary access. There you go. So this little note here, it says use chart to a dual axis chart with the average price data series plotted on the secondary axis. All right, and then you can hit OK, or we could do the opposite and try to go back. Let's see, column, and then go back to a line. You can do it like that. So I think it depends on how you want it to be, how you want it to look, and what's more important. So we're going to hit OK. Now we can see that. So it's showing you that the average price is based off the line, and we're showing that the bar is based off the home sold. So let's do this. Right now, I'm still like, I don't know. If I was looking at this, I'd still have some questions. So I'd probably add some axes titles and make sure that's updated properly. And you can type in there, you know, average price. And then home sold. Months. So, and then you have those fixed like that. If you're one of those that most of the time, if you talk to somebody, they either want the information on the axes or the numbers already on the axes, and sometimes they want the numbers, the actual data information on the actual column or the line. However, that doesn't always happen. A lot of times they recommend only doing one or the other because that's too many numbers. In this case, you have a lot of information already on the chart. So I would highly recommend either probably keeping it without the actual numbers on the chart here. So I wouldn't add the data labels. So I would not do this. And we can also, if you decide to do that, that's fine. And then if you click the orange one and add the data labels, you can see that's even crazier if you decide to do that. Okay. All right, any questions about that one? And that's a combo. So, and what's nice about the combo one, as we were discussing, and I was showing it to you, is it actually, when you click combo, it actually starts you by trying to get you to go ahead and make that decision. What do you want it to look like? And you make those changes before you move on. Okay. All right. So let's go here. And now we're at the presentation tab. Let's see. Yeah, presentation tab. And let's just kind of see what this says. Using the chart on the presentation worksheet, change the chart's color scheme and then change the same chart's layout. So right now, this is pretty bland. Oh my goodness. So let's change the color scheme. If we go over to the little paintbrush here and click it, let's go to color and let's choose blues. Go back to style and there's those. All right, so we did a little bit of changing on that. Okay, let's go to yearly summary. Using the chart on the yearly summary worksheet, change the chart's type to a line chart and then move the chart on the yearly summary worksheet to a new chart sheet. So that's something I hadn't shown you. So, all right, so let's change the chart's type to a line chart. So we've clicked on the chart. We're going to go up to chart design and then click change chart type. Go to line and we'll click it and then hit OK. Okay. So related to line chart, you can actually add your points. Okay. Let's really move that. Let's do marker. Marker options. Right now it's marked as none. Let's do a built-in. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And now you can see that some people like the lines without the little points. I'm a marker person. I'm a fan. I like to have a little bit more clear data. So there you go. And then we're going to move to a new chart sheet. So let's see, right click and move chart, and it pops up an option. You can move it, which would be, to me, you would just drag it. in the actual spreadsheet you're already on, or you can move it to another sheet on the page in the workbook, or you can create a brand new sheet. Okay, so let's say we're creating a brand new sheet, click OK, and it's been moved to its own spreadsheet. Okay, and it's gone from this other one. Okay, I'm going to show you that one more time. You just right click, move chart, and then you choose where you want to move it. All right. All right, let's go to this next one, which is Seattle Part 1. Let's try that. Plot the data on the Seattle worksheet as a 2D pie chart on the worksheet. So let's highlight this information. Let's go up to Insert, Recommended Charts, All Charts, Pie. And I would probably click that and then hit OK. And having a total doesn't make sense in this one because you're making it into a pie chart. And plus, you don't want to always have a total, obviously, in certain ones. So we're going to go up here to select data, and we're going to unclick total and then hit OK. And so there's that information. You can also select data, unclick percent, and only use days. Unclick days and only use percent. We can also add data labels. And if you go, when we're looking at the data label adding, go to the arrow, go to more options. It'll pop up over here, and you can look at the options for labels. You can include the category name. And like I said before, it will also bring those lines, those leader lines up automatically. Okay. If you decide to do days and not have percent, so let's go to the select data and go to days, remove the percent and hit OK. Right now it's showing numbers. So let's go to the more options, and we're going to look at label options. Let's use percentage and category name. So it's showing you the number and then the percentage that's already there. So which the percentage is figured already on here. But if you didn't decide to use that, you could still, it's showing you those percentages on the screen here. Obviously, if you use percentages as your numbers when you're creating the chart, then you don't want to click percentage because then it's like 40,000%, that kind of thing. So be careful with that. Okay. All right, let's go to sales part 1. And I'll move it over just a little bit more so we can see. Okay, plot the data on the sales worksheet as a simple 2-dimensional column chart. That'll be easy. Highlight this, leave the total out, and go to Insert, Recommended, All Charts, Column Chart, and hit OK. That was easy. Okay. Like I said, you can adjust that to make it a little bit better. If you were, you start by even just doing that here or here, just to kind of make it a little bit better before you send it off to somebody. You don't have to do a lot of work on it sometimes. Other times you do. So another thing I would like to state is you can adjust your axes. I guess I probably should show that to you. You can adjust the axes here. So for some reason, like it somehow pulls in numbers that are like just crazy big. So like right here, this one goes up to 2,159.24. You know, if you didn't want, it's an amount number, so $2,159.24. If you didn't want that to go, that top line to go up there, you can actually change your maximum to show like 2200, and then it would adjust to it. Now, the big thing with changing your axes and your units is you have to be careful, because when you do that, it actually changes how you're looking at the data that you're presenting. And so it could actually look false or fake. And you don't want to present badly. You want to make sure it looks correct. Don't want to make the data look really, really, really good or really, 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 really bad, because that's wrong. It needs to look, you know, even. So right here, this is done by 500. Let's say you did 200s. Okay, especially if you wanted to be able to see the lines a little bit better. Let's see what else you could do. You can change that this is actually currency on the side. That kind of thing. Okay. You can also, if you don't want to start at 0, which I don't recommend you not doing, I don't recommend you not starting at 0. I recommend you do start at 0. But if for some reason you're not starting at 0, you could change it to 100. And so 100 is your first, your bottom line, you know, that kind of thing. So you could change that there, your bounds and your units. Okay. All right. And here's another one. Let's try it real quick. Switch the rows and columns of the chart. So let's click on the chart. And let's go up to switch row and column and just click it. All right. So that's what it looks like. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so I can see it. And change the October sales amount for the flowers category to $888.25 and ensure the chart reflects the change. Okay. So that's good comment. I probably have not showed you all that. So it's the October sales for flowers. We're going to remove the 2 numbers, change it to 888. Click. Okay. And to make sure, so it looked like it made the change already. To make sure, you might want to just select data and then hit OK to refresh it, but it should have automatically refreshed. Okay. And then expand the data range plotted by the chart to include November so that you can compare sales with the 2 months. Okay. So right now it's only looking at October. So let's go to the chart design, select data. And we know that November is in C. So we could either highlight everything or just add the C here. I'm going to add C. Okay. And then let's hit OK. And then you can see it add October and November. Okay. Any questions about that? All right. Don't think we need to have to do that one. All right. I think we're good. So we're getting closer to the end. I've pretty much answered all the questions that were asked of me for yesterday. We've gone over regular charts, pivot tables, VLOOKUP, match, looked at different kinds of filtering. Does anybody have any questions about anything we've gone over so far, or have any other questions that have come up in the last 2 days that you're like, oh, I wish I could ask somebody that question? Go for it.
Actually, I've been working on building a regression for a report, and I'm having an issue where it keeps telling me that the fields are non-numeric, even though I've tried text to columns, I've tried formatting it as numbers, I've tried switching the comma and the period.
Okay. Are you, is this when you're looking at it as a pivot table or looking at it as just the actual data? And is this something you could share, or is that going to be an issue?
Yeah, I can show you an example of what I'm working on.
Okay. If y'all are okay, then I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if Don, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine. I've seen
Okay,
that come
awesome.
up when I accidentally select the header or the row label as opposed to the data
Right.
in the middle. Yeah, that may or may not be what's going on.
Yeah, and I'm one of those, I have to see it to be able to understand what you're asking sometimes. So.
Okay. All right, I'm going to share. Is that showing?
Yes, it is. Sorry.
Okay, so why isn't it letting me do anything with it? That's weird. I was just looking at it and now I can't now that I've shared.
Is it frozen?
Let me see if I can try a different way. Okay. So you can go into, I think I have the tools added. I may not have the tools added in this computer. All right, I work on this at work and I work on it here and they look totally different from PC to Mac.
I know how that is. I completely get it.
Well, I'm looking for the regression, but I can't find it on here. I know it's under the data tab. Well, I guess I can't show you on here because I have no idea what this looks like on a PC.
Huh, I wonder if you just didn't pull it up, if it didn't pop up with it. Oh yeah, there, yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. There we go. So you do regression, select your range. Do manual in here. So you select your independent and your dependent variables. That should be all I need to do. Well, it works on the PC, but when I've been trying to do it on my Mac, it'll tell me that these values are non-numeric.
Huh, I wonder.
I don't know why it's working on my computer at home, but when I try this on my MacBook Pro at work.
I wonder if it is just a issue between Mac and computer.
Okay.
Well, good job. You you figured it out. So
I did it.
Yay.
Isn't that just like Microsoft though?
Yes, every time.
It's like 90% of the IT issues. Once someone complains about it, it's like the computer knows it wants to embarrass you.
Every time I teach Excel, it happens to me, so I totally get it.
Okay, so it's probably just a Mac OS issue. Never mind. Cool.
Well, does anyone else have a question they might have that come up? All right, well, I've given you a lot of knowledge. Actually, I really don't know if I've given you anything, but I have tried to give you knowledge of something that you might not have had before. Hopefully you learned something since Tuesday. But there you go.
There you go. So are you taking your final bow, Mary Kate? Is that
I think so. And like I said, I've went through everything.
okay?
I mean, I could probably go in more depth, but I don't know how boring that would get for them. So,
No,
you know,
I think between the two of us, I think everybody knows what it's capable of, and now it's time to have some fun and just muck about with something where it's not like you're going before the board of directors and there's a lot of pressure. And if I don't get this right, so
and
I
those I was going to say those files I sent has tons of stuff on it that they could practice on if they don't have anything right now to use. So hopefully that'll help practice, and so you can work on something good. So
okay. All right. Well, I want to give them the remainder of the day to pick a data set to go looking for some data. It can be from work, but it absolutely doesn't have to be. But I'll write up what I'm looking for. But what I would like everybody to do is pick a data set that you can do some exploratory data analysis with, where it's data from something you're interested in. Like I'm gonna mess around with the Survivor television show data. I found that data set I told y'all, and I'll post it to the classroom along with that that little thing I did with U.S. states. But find a data set that has some columns that you can start to ask questions. It could be a sports team or a sports league. It could be data from the NBA. How does, and you could look at how height relates to total points, or, years in the league relates to scoring percentage. Or do they ever get better, or is it raw talent, or whatever the case may be? I'm going to look at the show, the television show Survivor, and start looking at some of the personality traits, people that have played more than one season, how they did on challenges, those sort of thing, how winning challenges relates to winning the season. If you've never watched Survivor, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. So when I do my little spiel, I'll describe the scenario, the domain of the data that I'm playing around with, so that you guys can kind of see what we're looking at. But I want to do something similar but expanded, with what I did with that United States, and how temperature, average daily high, relates to happiness, which my analysis showed it doesn't. It doesn't relate to happiness. There are other factors out there, many other factors. But just to practice playing around with Excel, grabbing a data set, honing it down to the columns that you need, because when you're working with a giant chart, or a giant worksheet full of columns, it can be confusing when you start using the auto magic. It gives you too many things to choose from, and Excel isn't as clean to work with as it is when you start to narrow things down and maybe get just the columns you need on a given worksheet in order to run numbers or draw charts. Yeah, that's what I want to do with the remaining hours. Just find the data and start seeing what you got, and start thinking of how you would do a data storytelling exercise, similar to what I did with that little United States project. So yeah, for the rest of the day, just pick your data, be ready to talk about it Monday morning, and then I'll provide more detailed guidance of what I'm looking for. But I'm hoping you'll find a data set that'll allow you to do, here's what a pivot table shows you about that data. Here's what charts and whatnot. Maybe throw some slicers in there. So I kind of want to, and we're going to do this via Zoom. You guys, I want you to practice coming on screen and explaining what you've gone through. And of course, I'll go first on Monday morning to give you an idea what I'm looking for, and then we'll use that time Monday to actually execute the project. And then we'll start our next topic really after this is SQL, structured query language, which requires you to know a little bit about how RDBMSs are laid out, relational database management systems, and table design, and how that will differ. And you'll start to kind of see that spreadsheet data often looks a little bit different than it does in a database. And sometimes you have to go from a spreadsheet to a database, and sometimes you got to go from a database out to a spreadsheet so that you can then draw graphs and whatnot. So that's where we're at. I do thank you very much, Mary Kate. If everybody can everybody do a Zoom thank you, applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank y'all for inviting me.
All right. So yeah, all right, guys, we will reconvene on Tuesday morning if there are no questions for me.
So are you wanting us to have our data sets ready to present, or just kind of have a topic picked by Tuesday?
I'd like you to have the data set selected and ready to at least say what it is.
Okay.
And what you're going to do, but I don't expect you to use work time to work on that project unless you're just really raring to go. We'll use that time Tuesday to really develop things, and we'll check in a time or two during the day on our normal class on Tuesday, make sure everybody's doing okay. So yeah, just the data set and kind of maybe some questions that you would ask of it, or some things that you think it might be able to tell you. And it's an exercise, guys. It's this analysis has probably been done out there. You can probably find all kinds of ways that people have already looked at data and whatnot, but you haven't, hopefully, with Excel on that particular data set. And again, and like I said, I'll go into more detail on first thing Tuesday morning. Okay. All right. Thanks again. It's a big day. Veterans Day, Grandpa Day, big day. I appreciate everybody's attention, and we'll see you all first thing Tuesday morning. And thanks again, Mary Kate.
Thank you.